Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar with Una Dimitrievich. Hi, Una. How are you?
Hi, Vova. I'm great. Happy to be here again.
Me too. I'm Vova, Head of Community at SmartCat. Una Dimitrievich is our recurring host, telling us a lot of interesting stuff about all things translation. So today we will be talking about direct clients, pursuing them, chasing them, catching them, whatever you can do with them. So this is Crowdcast, where we are now gathered. So on the left, you have the questions and answers tab, where you can ask something. There is also the polls tab, where you can vote for different options so we can better understand our audience. There's also the discussion tab that leads to our community portal of SmartCat, and where you can discuss something if the chat on the right is not enough. Also, you see the green link, which says Ride the Wave. I made it a bit obscure. Actually, it's about our SmartCat referral program. If you have time after this webinar, check it out and see what we have in store for you. Now, Una, will you tell us what we will be talking about today?
Yes, for sure. So this is a webinar that's in a series of webinars that we've been doing with SmartCat. And they're all really aimed at translators who are starting out in the business, aspiring translators who are looking to develop a freelancing business in whatever area of translation it may be. And I think this is the 7th in a series. Last time we talked about getting work through agencies and aggregators. So this is in some sense a sort of part 2, looking really at how to get direct clients, which are often seen as sort of the best way to work by many translators. So also the hardest sometimes, so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, so we will see your presentation first, right? And then we will have some talks. So do you want me to focus on it so we can start?
Yeah,
Did
you
I
can go
forget
ahead.
anything? Do you know?
No, I just wanted to present myself for those who don't know me, because I know that a lot of people actually, turn up for the first time to one of these webinars, so they don't necessarily have the background. But as I said, there are a lot of webinars that we've already done. They're on that link that Vova's just put up in the chat. So I'm also a translator. I haven't been translating for decades. I remember really what it was like to be just starting out in that very scary phase of launching your business. And so I wanted to create something that was going to help other people to go through what I went through, just using the experience that I had, the hits and the misses, to share my experience and to hopefully create a really supportive community online, and SmartCat is helping us all do that, so thanks for that. As I said, I'm a translator. I translate from French into English. I also do a few other things like proofreading and subtitling, and I work from Italian and Serbo-Croat from time to time. I'm also a coach, so I help people who are starting out, and this webinar course is part of that work as well. So with that introduction, I think you can go ahead.
Okay,
and
let's focus on the presentation.
Great, so you guys can keep chatting. I'm not going to be looking at the chat anymore, but Vova is going to be doing the organizing part of this work and letting me know if there's any issues with sound or with the presentation, but hopefully at the moment you should all just see my PowerPoint screen. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a sort of part 2 to what we talked about last time, which is working with agencies and job aggregators. And it's kind of interesting to note the difference between approaching work from these different sources. What I want to talk about today is really direct clients and translators community as potential sources of work for you. And one thing just to mention before I start, what we're not going to be talking about specifically is online marketing through things like social networks to direct clients. On the one hand, there are entire blogs, podcasts, and webinars devoted to this. It's a big topic. And on the other hand, it's not something that I use a lot to get direct clients. So other people out there are much better suited than me to talk about it. But before we start, the main difference in terms of looking for clients compared to agencies is that there's 2 different approaches. If you think about working with agencies, I talked about it last time, you're talking about casting a really wide net. Think of it like trawling a big fishing net along the seafloor and picking up, you know, lots of seaweed and some little sardines and just a few prized lobsters at the end. But we pick this image that you see here because when it comes to direct clients, you really need a different approach. You need to pick up your little butterfly net and chase after very specific targets. And whether you find this harder or not really depends on what kind of person you are, what kind of work you enjoy doing more. In the end, it's just a different approach to netting something very precious in the end. So let me just show you an outline of what we're going to be talking about today. The pros and cons of working with direct clients, because it's not all fun and games, how to identify your niche market, and then two sort of very broad methods for getting clients. On the one hand, cold calling, on the other hand, a more direct method, direct contact. And finally, we'll talk about your personal approach to marketing, some key takeaways from everything we discuss, and at the end, we'll mention how you can also leverage the translation community to help you develop a client base. So, is working with direct clients really the golden grail option that it's often touted to be by many people? Of course, it can often be more lucrative because you're charging by the word more than you would be when working with an agency, but it also really involves a lot more time investment, more research, more communication. Let's look at these pros and cons in a little more detail together. So to start off with, of course, the major thing, if you're working by the word, you can charge more by the word because you don't have the middleman of the agency. You can also much more easily charge your clients by the hour that you work or simply give them a project charge. And direct clients are often more open to negotiating rates, to negotiating deadlines. They're happy with your work. They're less likely to switch easily to somebody else because they won't have a huge database of translators. And you can really build client relationships over time. So once you get to know a company, you can start doing more interesting, more diverse work with them. If they like you, they'll promote your services to other colleagues. You can get referrals that way. And of course, you can get lots of direct contact with them, go back and forth, discuss the text, as long as they're available. On the con side, however, bagging a direct client through cold calling, it can really involve a lot more preparation than you even might think. You're going to need to work on your marketing and your presentation skills. And unfortunately, even despite this, it can often just come down to who you know rather than how good a translator you really are. And there's a few things to bear in mind when you're reaching out to direct clients and when you're starting to work with them. You as a translator are not their priority. Translation is not their business. You're just a tiny part of what they do. So they're not going to be as reactive as when you're working with someone who's already in the translation industry. And they're not going to understand your job very well and what it entails. So they might have really quite unrealistic expectations of what you do. Just to give you an example, I had a client who I still work with, but who said to me that they would send me a 10,000 word job on Monday. And for me, 10,000 word job is a week's worth of work. So I blocked out my whole week and I said to other clients, I said, you know, I can't do those jobs. I pushed everything back. And they didn't actually send me the job until Thursday. And what that means, what that clients won't often realize is that if they send you a job 3 days later, that can actually mean a 3-day salary loss for you if you've already said no to other things. So you do need to explain more. You often need more patience. And you might end up investing quite a lot of your time for relatively infrequent work if the clients you're working with don't really need regular translation. And the last point, at least what I have found in my experience, is that direct clients often far less reliable payers and agencies, especially in terms of how quickly they pay you. This may not always be the case, of course, but it's been my experience. So to sum up on this point, you need to have patience when you're working with direct clients. You need to be positive when you're communicating with them. You need to do probably a lot more explaining than you might think. But they will also learn the process. They'll start understanding how you work, what your job entails, and your relationship will develop. I had a complicated situation once. For example, I remember that when I had a client who sent me a text, but they were in a rush. They kept changing the version of the text, and they didn't correctly note the changes. And then when I was asking questions about those changes, they were really slow to actually get back to me. They were late paying for the project. It was crazy, and I spent a lot of time just working on this one text, going over and over it. But at the same time, I had to realize that they were in a rush mode. They were really under pressure, and they certainly didn't need additional pressure from me, since for them, this text translation just wasn't really the priority. And afterwards, when this crazy situation was over, they were really nice. They thanked me for my patience, for my understanding, and while I actually wasted a number of hours redoing this text, and I was charging by the word, not by the hour, what I lost that week, I gained in many future projects that client sent me. So that's just kind of a situation that you should think about when you're starting to work, considering working with direct clients. But if this is still a path that you want to take, if you want to move away from working with agencies, for example, the first thing that you really need to do is identify your niche market. Decide who do you want your clients to be. It's not enough to say anyone who needs translation from Y to X language. You need to be far more specific than that. And how to do that? Well, you need to start asking yourself a certain number of questions. What do I want to translate? First of all, it's important. What do you enjoy translating? What do you like? What are you interested? And when you've got that down, who needs my services? And especially who needs them often? What companies are actually requiring translation in that area? Who can afford my services as well? Because it's all great and wonderful to say that you want to work in a field that you're completely passionate about, something that's your hobby. But actually, when you start looking into it, you realize that it's an industry that really doesn't work with big budgets, and they are very reluctant to pay translators a living wage. So you'll need to move away from that. And also, where do I already have contacts? This is more important than you might think. You need to leverage the contacts and the networks that you already have from your previous professional experiences, or also simply from your life, from your studies. Think about the people that you know, what areas they work in, what contacts they have, what benefits that can bring you. And while you're asking yourself those questions, while you're doing that, to identify certain characteristics about your potential clients and who they need to be. So this might be industry sectors. You might narrow it down to a few industry sectors that you want to work with. It might be geographic areas, because you think, okay, I want to work with people in my area or people in these particular countries or regions. It might be business size, because you might be aiming for startups, or you might be aiming for businesses developing in a certain way, or very big companies. And they might also have special characteristics. It might be family-owned businesses that you're looking for, or businesses that are in a process of expanding into certain markets, things like that. And once you've done that, once you've gone through this process, and this is a crucial process, if you don't do this and you're confused about why you're not getting clients, well, you need to go back to this stage. But once you've gone through this, once you've identified who your potential clients could be, then I can give you a bunch of suggestions, and we're going to go into it about how to reach out to direct clients. But ultimately, there's no single strategy. There's nothing that's going to work for everybody in every case and for every client. It's going to depend on your strengths. It's going to depend on who your clients are, how they communicate, and what they're receptive to. But to start off with, we're going to look at this kind of broad category of cold calling method. So once you've identified who your clients are going to be, what you need to start doing is research. Research is really important. What do I mean by this? Well, identify, so once you've got the types of organizations or the types of companies you want to work in, try and list about 100 of them. Try and sort them by whatever criteria is going to be relevant to you. So whether it's the size of the business, whether it's how close they are, how much they're worth, how big their budgets are, how well known they are. And then start finding out, start doing research, start looking at who you can contact, who's going to be the relevant person in that company that you can get in touch with, get their email, find their LinkedIn, and then look at what their needs might be. Look at what the company's needs might be in terms of the languages that they work in, and also how they communicate through what channels and in what languages, and if this is going to be relevant to what you can offer them. And once you do that, when you start contacting them, well, let's start looking at cold calling, literally by telephone, you need to be prepared. So what you don't want to do is find a contact, find a phone number, and then just pick up your phone straight away and call and hope for the best. It's not a good idea, and it's not going to work. You need to really prepare in advance a presentation, an introduction of yourself, whether it's going to be something that you're going to say to a person who picks up the phone, or whether it's going to be what you're going to leave on the voicemail message. And you don't want to be caught off guard at this stage, like this is the lady here in the picture. You want to introduce yourself and try and also end in a question. You know, my name is this, I provide such services, could you please tell me? And then, who could I send my CV to? Who would be the appropriate person to talk to about this issue in your company? You want to give them a lead-in so that you can start a discussion from there. And then if you're also emailing them, try and be personal, find a connection, talk to them about why you're interested in what they do, talk to them about what you can offer them, but without being really sales pitchy, because nobody likes advertising. If the companies that you're contacting are relatively generic, if you've chosen something like, I don't know, 3-star hotels in Bologna, then you can have a more generic email template and just insert the relevant information. But otherwise, you're more likely to be applying to a specific company for a very specific reason, and you need to personalize your emails to reflect this, to reflect who they are, who the company is, how they communicate, who you are, and then especially to tell them how you can specifically benefit them and through the services that you offer. So as you start contacting them, make sure you've got a database. I just use Excel, whatever kind of system you want. List these contacts, list, you know, the names, list any comments, list whether they've replied or not, and then importantly, set a schedule to follow up. You have to do this. You have to. It's never going to happen on the first go. Never are you going to call a direct client and then by the end of a 5-minute conversation have them say, okay, yeah, great, I'll send you this text for translation. It just doesn't happen like that. You need to have an introduction and you need to follow up multiple times, be it in a few weeks or a few months' time, once you've sent them documentation, your CV. The number of times that you need to follow up is, again, something that is largely underestimated. And you need to follow up until either they say, okay, well, we'll try you out, we're interested in your services, and the conversation goes on from there, or until they clearly say to you, well, you know what, frankly, your services just are of no interest and no use to us. And until then, you've got to keep going. So that's for the cold calling. Another broad category that I want to mention here is the direct contact method. Now, I've got to say, this really often works best. I think that regardless of what technology has brought us, there's really something to be said about in-person communication and personal impressions. And there's no doubt that a client is more likely to contact you if you've met in person, if you've smiled at them, if you've shook hands, if you have exchanged business cards, rather than if she's just received some kind of faceless email from someone she doesn't know. So that's the first point. A way to go about this, not the only way, but a way to go about this is to find relevant industry and networking events in your area. And I would say even if they're a few hours drive away, it's going to be beneficial for you to invest the time and to go and to network directly. And this may be seminars, this may be meetups, like I organize a local meetup where I live for people who are interested in the language industry. It could be local associations, it could be trade shows, anywhere where people meet up who are all interested in something that you want to be working in as well. But more than that, I think in general, you just need to be interested in the people around you in any setting. find out what they do, and think about how your work could benefit them and their business. So you just need to ask questions to initiate conversations, because what you'll find is that people like talking about themselves and about their service or their product, and this can really give you an idea of what kind of linguistic services they might need. And from there, they'll probably ask you, anyway, what do you do? And then you can say, with the added information that you've just gotten, well, actually, I translate in this area. I've done something really similar to what you might need for your website, etc., etc. Have a business card on hand. They don't cost that much to print. They may seem kind of old-fashioned, but I think they're really important to just give someone something as you leave, and of course, ask them for their card. Note down on their card that they give you any little information and comments that you've remembered from your exchange, so that you can use that when you follow up with them later in your email. So it's important to actually get their card as well, so that you can add their contact to your list and schedule follow-up. Just a few days later, it can be as simple as sending them an email to say, just wanted to let you know that it was lovely to meet you and have that really interesting discussion about such and such. Here's my email, by the way. If ever you need services, I'll be more than happy to help you expand your business with X community or whatever it may be. And also, once you do have their contact details, once you've met somebody new, research them again, look them up on LinkedIn, look up their company, find out what they do, add them to your LinkedIn contacts if that's something that you like to use. Share relevant industry information, offer them solutions for any problems they might have, and generally just nurture the contacts and show interest in what they do. This is what people really appreciate. I know that all of this might seem a little bit abstract in some sense, so I wanted to sort of give you a few examples of how I've landed clients, direct clients, especially by having a sort of personal approach. And we'll go into some of these details later. But for example, I got a direct client once because I was talking to my future landlady's son, explaining to him what my husband and I did for a living. And of course, when you tell people what you do, you at least want to mention your language peers. So I said, you know, oh, and I'm a freelance translator. I translate from French into English. And he seemed to be a little bit interested, and you know, he's like, oh, great, ask me a few more questions. And a few days later, he contacted me saying that a friend of his, actually in her company, they needed a presentation translated. They were giving in an English-speaking country, and could he pass on my information? I said, yes, of course. And I got a job through that, simply. It's not just about telling people around you what you do, but tell them to tell other people what you do as well. So for example, while my husband doesn't work in an area that I translate in at all, it's far too technical for me, and so neither do his co-workers, I made sure that he told everyone when I was starting out in my freelancing venture. And actually one of his co-workers' wives worked for a company, for an organization that was really something I was targeting, and she was more than happy to try out my services and to pass on that information to her coworkers and to a few other companies she collaborated with. So I ended up getting really good clients just through that kind of unexpected connection. I've used LinkedIn as well. I don't use it regularly, but I think it's a good way to reconnect with previous colleagues you maybe have had, or you know, people you've been to university with. And for example, I noticed that someone I used to work with moved jobs, started working for another organization that I thought was really interesting. And so I just got in touch and said, oh, I haven't heard from you in years, but congratulations on this new job. It seems really interesting. By the way, you know, once we started having a chat, oh, I'm translating in this area. So gave her an update on what I was doing and got into that organization's translator database through her. I've also been going to networking events just for freelancers from other industries, just meeting people regularly for drinks, finding out how other people organize their freelancing lives. And after I'd been going for about 2 years to one of these events, and meeting these people over and over, seeing the same faces, one of them reached out to me and said, actually, I was thinking that I really want to have this little book that I wrote. He was like a life coach, and he had a book that he'd written for his target audience. And he said, I think it would be really good to actually have it translated into English. Would you do that for me? I said, great. So that took, 2 years of going to these networking events without particularly aiming to find clients there, just to meet people doing something like a similar job to me. And that ended up bringing me...
Sorry to interrupt, it seems like your presentation is frozen somehow. We only see a blank box.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just giving you some examples. I haven't even written these down because these are just examples of how I've got...
for us to think on.
Yeah, no worries. The presentation's good. It's all working. But yeah, I will move on to this. Personal approach to marketing. So what was I going to talk about here? Playing to your strengths. I think, just if you're someone who's very communicative, then going to these kind of networking events might be a good idea for you. And if you hate the idea of doing that, then it's, don't worry about it. There are other ways to market yourself, to market your services. If you're uncomfortable with something, then other people are going to feel it as well. So if someone tells you, oh, you really need to do content marketing to get your name out there, or you really need to be active on Twitter, but if to you this just feels like a chore, then I think that's really going to show in the content that you produce. And when I see content like that, I feel like it's pointless, like it's manipulative rather than being something that's spontaneous and it's useful. So do what you enjoy. And don't think of it as marketing yourself. I know that I really dislike this word and this concept, and that a lot of people who are like me, what we really enjoy is communicating and translating, and not marketing. It's not our field, it's not our area, it's not something that we decided to be freelancers to do. What you need to think of it as is just talking to people about what you do and why you love doing what you do, and trying to help others improve their business, trying to help others improve whatever actions they're doing through what you can offer them. I think that's the best way to go about it. Talk to people about why your work is interesting. Get them to remember you. Just, be enthusiastic about what you do, and you're going to stick in their minds. And then whatever method, whatever approach you choose, be it focusing on social networks and Twitter, be it cold calling people or going to conferences, whatever you choose, just be really systematic and be persistent in your approach. And this is going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy, but it is going to be your most precious investment. You're going to need to have a goal for how you want to reach out to potential clients, and your strategy in implementing it, you need to do it every day, every single day. Don't expect to just go to one networking event or to just, send one email and actually get a job at the end of the week from that action. And importantly, just, be yourself, whether you're participating in online communities or offline communities. Remember that you are the most faithful representative and the best representative of your own business and of what you do. So just let your personality and your passion shine through when you're in contact with other people. And another point is stay in touch with former colleagues and classmates. Make sure you add them to your professional network. You actually never know through which channel the next job is going to come. And I was reminded of this really yesterday, because I got called up by a film company in Italy who called and said that they wanted me to translate a film script, and I'd never heard of them. And they said, well, actually, you were recommended to us by X person. And this person who recommended me was someone who I was in university with, and whose doctorate I had proofread. Her PhD thesis, I helped her proofread it, and it was in this kind of area of film history, And so when she was in touch with some company and they needed something translated, well, she thought of me. So you never, as I said, you never know where jobs are going to come from. They will come from unexpected places. And getting clients when you don't know them to start off with, when you don't have a personal connection with them, it's going to involve building relationships and building trust over time. Like I said, the first meeting will rarely, if ever, lead to immediate work. You need to invest in your clients for them to invest in you. So some key takeaways from this presentation, just to sum up in a few points, what I think you need to remember if you want to work with direct clients as opposed to just focusing on agencies. Oh, you're right, Boba, there's just here a bit of sound on your end. Yeah? Okay, so first of all, choose the approach that you enjoy most. There's hundreds of marketing tactics out there. There's a bunch of strategies that you can look at, that you can use to approach clients. You need to select the ones that you're going to enjoy doing and that it's going to take you the least effort and the least time. The second point is setting yourself a clear goal and a clear schedule. Who do you want to contact? How many clients? How? By when? And this includes follow-up. And this includes, when I say follow-up, I mean not just sending an email a week later saying, oh, did you get my CV? But persistently following up until you get either told that they're not interested or until they ask for your services. You often don't realize how easily people forget an email, how easily people forget a phone call, because simply they're swamped in their work. And they're not ignoring you because you're annoying them. They're often just simply busy with other things, and you need to remind them that you exist. And finally, people talk a lot about word of mouth bringing work, bringing direct clients. And this is true, but what is word of mouth? Word of mouth initially requires you to be actively engaged for a long time. It can be for years with your potential client base, with whoever works in the industries that you're interested in, with former colleagues, former classmates. You need to be spending time now spreading the word about what you do, and of course then providing excellent service once you do work with people, getting them to give you referrals, getting them to say something nice that you can put up on your website, for example. And this process, which is longer than you might think, it's going to give passive rewards later. So if you're just starting out and you really need to work quickly and you really need to, earn money in the next few months, direct clients might not be the best option for you. You might want to focus on channels like translation agencies initially, even though you might be earning a bit less with them, and investing your time in developing a client base. It's going to benefit you later on. This is, especially been true for me. I think that people underestimate how much research and how much follow-up is needed if you're going after very specific clients that you're interested in, and especially if you don't already have a direct contact, people who know you in that area. And the last point that I just wanted to kind of go into is the translation community. I think people really forget about what the translation community can do for you, because we're all sort of on our own, in our own little office, and we feel very lonely and isolated. But there is a whole translation community out there. It's just a bit virtual, and you need to figure out how, where we are. We're here. You need to find us and leverage that contact, and you can do that in various ways. First of all, just generally, the translation community can provide support and can provide assistance regarding things like business strategies, for example, even linguistic queries you may have. I use the ProZ forum a lot to ask questions if I have any doubts about translation, or just simply to vent. If you're really struggling, if you're having a hard time, come to the SmartCat forum, chat to us, tell us, what's on your mind, why you're having such a hard time. And people will be out there to provide suggestions, provide support. don't feel like you're all on your own with this one. The translation community can also, of course, provide referrals. Some translators, I know it's good to keep in touch with translators who are similar language combinations to you, because they can often refer clients to you if it's a different language combination that they don't work in. That's been a fruitful source of direct clients for me in the past. You can also share clients with the translation community. I know that a lot of us who end up having more work that we can take on than we can take on, or just very big projects coming in, and clients who are insisting on short deadlines, we actually need to share this work out. We need to bring in other translators who can work with us and who we can then proofread to give a finished product in a shorter period of time. And finally, collaboration. This can be, again, on large or cross-language products. So this is typically why agencies, are often a better option for clients, because if there's a company who needs something translated into 15 languages, well, there's no one translator who can do that, so they go through an agency. But if my client comes to me and says, oh, I need this translated into English, but I also need it translated into Italian, I can say, okay, no worries, I've got a close collaborator who works into Italian, and I can help my clients on cross-language projects in that sense. So don't hesitate to also reach out to the translation community, but also, as always, in a way that's going to be acceptable to them, that's not going to feel like you're being really pushy or salesy, but just very open in what you can offer and why you're reaching out to them. So to give you an example again on this, I had a proofreader recently who contacted me, I think it was through Prose, with his profile information, just simply saying, I'm proofreader of English, this is all the stuff I've done, got great references, I've got great experiences, and if you need my services, here I am. And I thought that was actually really great, because whilst I haven't used his services yet, in the next few months, if something comes up and I do need to get someone to proofread something, well then he's kind of at the back of my mind. I've got his email. He's one of the first people I might think about. So again, something just to think about in terms of how you can access clients. Your clients might actually be other translators. Yeah, you need collaborators. You need collaborators because once you go on holiday, it's better to give your client to a trusted colleague than to just say to them, oh, sorry, I'm away for a month, and risk losing them to another avenue. So good idea, especially to work with people who have an opposite language pair. It's definitely would be my advice. That, I think, is the end of this presentation. As always, as I say, do get in touch with me. It's really great to hear from people, to hear about what they found interesting in the webinars, any questions that they like answered. And if you do want to come to future webinars that we do, bear in mind that whenever you do leave questions in the Q&A, it's really useful for us to see them beforehand. That way we've got a bit of time to think about what you've asked and to give you a bit more of a detailed answer. So that is my website, unadtranslation.com, and my email address, unadtranslation@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, although I'm not a particularly big tweeter. That's it, and I think back over to you, Robert. If you're still there. There you are.
On screen. Thank you, Una. That was very interesting. What was the weirdest way you ever got a direct client?
The weirdest way? I think the most unusual way is the one I mentioned, which was just my landlady's son. It's completely unexpected. I was talking to him for a very different reason about what I do, to say to him like, oh, we earn enough to be able to rent your apartment. And then that ended up turning into a job. It was completely bizarre and unexpected. And I think that's often what happens when you actually start communicating with people, talking about what you do. There's, on the one hand, you can be chasing after very specific clients, and on the other, you just spread information about what your work is, and then in a very unexpected way, jobs will start coming towards you.
Yeah, I think that's...
What about you?
I think that's the most interesting part of working with direct clients, that it actually opens so many new paths for you unlike with agencies, when you're just more or less a passive executor or performer, I don't know what's the correct word in English, the one who performs what is given. But as when you are looking for direct clients, you can choose which ones to look for, and the whole fortune is in your own hands. That's maybe the most important thing I like about working with direct clients. For instance, the other day I was reading a book to my son, a children's book, and it was so great in Russian. So I decided to get in touch with the author, and who knows, maybe we will translate this book into English. And I will, of course, look for a proofreader among my colleagues. It's once again coming back to the collaboration thing. You may have seen, some of you, the webinar I had the other week about smart agents that is dedicated to how you can be a one-man agency on SmartCat, but I'm not here to push it, but anyway, you can check it out. My weirdest one was when I was spammed by some legal firm from Moscow over a long time, and at some point I started replying to them, and they turned out to be a pretty well-paying client after all.
So you got work from a spammer?
Yes. Well, I do spam as well. You know, you all receive my emails, I think, so it's a bit of corporate.
Well, that's spam you signed up for. That's different. Like spam you actually signed up for is not the same.
There is no distinct boundary, you know, sometimes. But yeah, I know in some countries cold calling is illegal, so it's a tricky topic. But anyway, let's see what people ask us. There was one question. I think there were not too many of them, but one I think is worth answering. Just let me try to handle Crowdcast because it's acting weird again. So Chiara asks, what is the #1 thing that a prospect looks for in a translator? Hassle-free project management, cost effectiveness, experience expertise, quick turnaround times, or a mix of all these? So what do you think?
Yeah, I read that question. I think it's a really interesting question, and there's different ways to approach answering it. One way is to say, it depends, you know, what is a client but a person, and a person is in a particular context. And if you're dealing with someone who is working on a high budget project, but who's terrified of her boss and who needs something done, you know, perfectly, or she thinks she's going to get fired, then that person is going to look for a translator who has, you know, a really professional looking website, you know, great referrals, who can show her 10 examples of very similar work that they've already completed, and budget isn't going to be an issue. And on the other hand, you'll have people in really small startups who are just looking to, you know, just scraping by, and they're looking for whoever can, you know, proofread a Google translation. So partly you need to do the research to find out what your client wants. And if you're only aiming for industries or clients who don't have the budget to pay you what you need to be paid, then you need to look elsewhere. So, you know, that's sort of one way to think about it. The other way is to say, you are also sometimes a client. So you seek services for different things. You might have sought services from translators or from freelancers in the past in general. So if you're looking for someone to do your website, what's your priority? What are you looking for? Are you trawling through, you know, just these freelancer websites just to see who's the cheapest? Are you looking for, you know, someone? Are you finding a website that's really cool and then finding out who did that website and contacting them? Personally, what I mainly do is ask around, ask my friends. Oh, do you know someone who does websites? You just get recommendations from people around you, because what you want is to work with someone that you trust. You want to have a good communication, good relationship with them. You want to have, you want the first time you call them or the first time you get in touch with them, you want them to reply to you promptly. You want them to be polite, and you want them to be nice. In any kind of, you know, relationships that we have, be it personal or professional, you want to work with people that you like. So that's, you know, another answer is just to say, leverage the contacts that you have to make sure that if anyone hears someone who needs your translation services, they think of you and they recommend you. That's going to be a really important, you know, source of direct clients in the long term.
Yeah, I do agree. For some time now, I've been being a lot on this other side and looking for translators. And one thing that translators often do not realize is how vulnerable actually clients are to our irresponsibility if it happens. Because if they have a deadline, and I've seen cases when a translator accepted a job, but by the deadline it was just nothing, and the translator was unresponsive. So, and it actually can cause a lot of trouble. So I think this responsibility and professionalism being always online, not always online, like if they call you at 4 a.m. in the morning, you must do whatever they want, but if you commit to a job, you must do whatever it takes. I don't know, if you have an emergency, you must find someone who will do it for you. But it's really freelancers, not companies. That's why a lot of companies are afraid to work with them, because they feel it will be not a reliable approach to working. So if we can prove them wrong, then more and more companies will be willing to work with freelancers.
Yeah, you're right. I think that because of the way that our community is not really regulated, in a sense, you don't have certain degrees, you know, certain certifications that you have to be a translator, like you do to be an accountant, for example. It's normal that people are wary, and that you do have a crazy amount of variety out there. You do have people who just aren't at all reliable or serious or good at what they do. And so I think that the system that you guys have in place with SmartCat, where you have, you know, your top translators who are tested and vetted, and I think that that's a really good way to tell clients, like, you're going through a vetting process. So it's not just a database that they're accessing. They're accessing something that's been checked.
That's actually saving a lot of nerves, because when I look for a translator, I just open the search results and I see more or less that the people who we will be hiring, that they already had projects completed, that they already had test passed. So yes, it helps a lot. And regarding cost effectiveness, I also see that in the chat there is some discussion of low rates, that some, for instance, Eastern European companies do not offer high rates. In this case, we are talking about Czech companies. I guess we can say the same about Russian companies. There is maybe a hack that I can share, that a lot of Russian and Czech guys, they go to the US and found startups that they still have a lot of staff left in the original place in Russia, in the Czech Republic, and they need only
you broke up a little bit just there. Can you just repeat what you said about the hack?
Yeah, I'm saying that even in some markets where the usual rates are very low, like the Russian, for instance, there are a lot of companies who themselves escaped that market and went to the Silicon Valley, for instance. But they still have a lot of documentation to translate, because their roots are here. But as they're already on the other side of the pond, they are willing to pay more, and they understand the price of quality. So if you go looking for startups coming from your area, I think you can find someone who is willing to pay considerable money, even if your usual market is not that well paid. It's not a big of problem for, I don't know, German to English, English to German, Western European languages, but for Russian, Ukrainian, Kazakh, it's of course a different story.
Yeah, I think that with those, you know, whenever you've got a situation like that, you need to be way more specific. You need to be more specific about who you're looking for. You need to be more detailed in your research, because your potential clients who are willing to pay you what you need to be paid, especially if you're not actually living in those countries, they're going to be few and far between. But once you find them, then that is going to be your holy grail, you know.
Yeah, I think this research and the first email you sent, I actually have never called anyone, so I don't know what to say here, but when you're writing an email, it's the best thing to already provide some value in your first email. So for instance, you found a website with a lousy translation, so you proofread it, 1 or 2 paragraphs of the most critical text on the front page, send it to them and tell them that your translation sucks and you can do it better. Yeah. I have found numerous clients like this, and it's in some way it's a piece of cake, because if you're an accountant, for instance, you cannot know from the views, from the looks, if someone you're approaching has a bad accountant or not. or if you're a lawyer or whatever. But if you're a translator and you have all the internet before you, even without leaving your desk or sofa, I don't know, couch, you can see everything. You can find the best leads just by browsing the web and seeing where translations suck, and they suck in most places. So I think there's plenty of butterflies for all of us.
But I've got an interesting anecdote about that, actually, because that's the kind of approach that I really wanted to take initially, and I tried that a few times, and it never worked out for me. Maybe I didn't do it right, but the kind of funniest thing looking back on it was when I went to a big like trade show that was in the kind of food industry, let's say, generally, broadly speaking, and there was a terrible flyer that was an Italian company. It was a trade show in France, but it was an Italian company, and I also speak Italian and translate from Italian. And they had this awful text in English. And I did that. I took the flyer, I marked it in red, like everything that I would change, and I emailed the company. I found, you know, because the flyer had like the name of the editor or whoever it was, like the right contact person, and I emailed them saying, like, I went to this trade show, like, your company is great, you provide such good, you know, products, but it's such a shame that your international clients are coming to these trade shows. To them, you don't look professional because, you know, this text just doesn't reflect how, you know, how good your products are. So I sent them that with my markup of the text, and it was the translator who got back to me. So whoever I'd emailed had obviously just sent that to their translator, being like, what is this? And she got back to me mad at me with an, you know, she wrote me an email where she was so angry at me, and saying, you know, like, and in any case, the English should only be translated by a native speaker. I think she thought that I wasn't native just because of my surname.
I think you get it a lot.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, you know, people can assume that. That's fine. But and so she wrote me this really nasty email, and I wrote back just really politely saying, listen, I'm really sorry. I didn't send this to you. I think that, you know, this client really deserves, you know, something a bit better. And I am a native speaker, but I did not mean to. I really did not mean to upset you. I did not mean to cause a problem in your working relationship. And then she wrote back saying, like, okay, thanks. You know, I appreciate it, and that was it. So yeah, so, you know, you be prepared for those.
Yeah, this happens, I know. But in a lot of cases, you will reach out to the guy running all the thing.
Yeah, I think it is a good approach in theory. Like, I think that it's I'm sure that it does work, and I think that's an interesting approach, and it's kind of fun for you as a translator as well to just go through something and be like, oh, I can do this better, and then just mark up.
Yeah, I know that sometimes people can get mad about it. Maybe you can tell us about your approach when you translated this comic strip and it got viral.
Oh yeah. So there was this comic strip that was flying around French Facebook, like my French Facebook contacts, and that got picked up by the media here because it was dealing with sort of relationships between men and women in terms of household management. And I thought it was really great. Oh, I feel we are connecting. So I thought it was a really great little cartoon, and I really wanted to share it with my English contacts, but it was in French, and I couldn't even go in and change it because I didn't have access to the file. Obviously, it was the cartoonist's file. Oh, are you having a hard time following me?
Just.
Oh well. Do you guys hear me okay, or do you want me to try out with the headphones? I don't know, we lost you, but it seems like people are having a bit of a problem with my sound. I could try on headphones if that helps.
I now hear you fine.
Okay, so yes, so with this cartoon, I got in touch with the cartoonist. I just looked on her website, found her contacts. I sent her an email, but I also sent her a Facebook message because she had been posting this to her Facebook. And when I sent her the message, I used really colloquial language. I made a reference as a joke to something that was in the cartoon. So I communicated with her directly using exactly the same language that she uses when communicating with her audience. And I said, oh, I'm sure your email must be so full because you're getting so much attention. Everyone must be emailing you. So I just thought I'd send you a Facebook message as well. And she got back to me and said, yeah, great, you know, I'd love an English translation. I saw that on her website, she had an English page, but barely anything on it. And the one translation that was on it wasn't very good quality translation. I don't think it was done by a professional translator. And so I did that just one evening for her and sent it out. And sure enough, before I'd even shared it on my Facebook, my friends were were texting me and saying, oh, I just saw this, you translated it. You know, they'd already done the tour, like within less than 24 hours, it spread all over the world. And just because of that, I asked her obviously to link to my website when she published it. And through that, I got about 1,000 hits on my website, just people clicking on that link. From her cartoon. So it's a good way to get people to notice you, come to your website. And yeah, you can find direct clients that way. I didn't get another client from that yet, but that stuff takes time, you know. That can 6 months later come and someone can
especially
you and say, oh, I remember I saw your contact there, you know.
It's not business translation, so you might get some literary orders or something like this. By the way, we had a question here from Maria Eugenia Perez. I would love to translate books. She says technical books, but let's generalize this. And I see you have translated books. Awesome. It's about you, Una. So how can we approach the market of book translation? I think it's a very specific question, but maybe you have some tips.
Well, the thing is that the books I've translated have just been contacts have come towards me. So this is the thing, I've never contacted an editor, I've never looked to translate books myself. People know I translate, and occasionally someone comes to me and says, I'd like this book translated. I would love at some point to translate literature, but it's also a whole different process. I don't know a lot about it because I haven't launched into it yet, but from what I understand from other translators, if you find a work that you want to translate, obviously you need to reach out to the author first and see if they want it translated, etc. But then it can also be your job as a translator to find a publisher in that other language that you're translating into who's going to actually be willing to publish it and be okay with you know, paying you for that work. So literary translation especially can actually be far less well paid. It's a kind of it's a weirdly elite, but also not actually elite in terms of the salary.
Maybe it makes sense.
Area.
Like you invest your effort into having a more high-profile name, you know, high-profile name, so that you can share it in your CV that I translated. I don't know, something huge. I did a few book translations, and they were all either for peanuts or for revenue sharing, which never came. But at least I can boast having translated them.
Exactly. So you need to be able to say, okay, I don't know how much I'm going to get from this, but it's fun. I just want to do it for myself, and I have the time. And then, you know, that might turn into something, but it might not. And I've never chased after big publications. People have just come to me and said, would you help me translate this, or would you proofread this? That's how it's happened to me. Again, just getting out there, letting people know that you exist.
Yeah, maybe someday we can do something like this on Smartket. I don't know, just an idea that came to me, that we can go get in touch with publishing houses, because it's easier to get in touch if you're a company and not a single translator. So maybe we can have some community initiative, getting cool translators.
Translators will love you if you do that. There are so many translators who would love to get into literary publishing, because we're linguists, you know, we love language, we love literature, we love reading. So
even if we translate pulp manuals, we are anyway linguists. That's true.
Yeah.
So I think we can maybe finish at this positive note. What do you think? Do you have still time?
Sounds good. Yeah, we've got 1 minute left. I think it's just about time to say our goodbyes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Una. It was very exciting for me, hopefully for everyone as well. And you can watch the replay here later, easily at the same link. And make sure to watch Una's other webinars and our other webinars, and follow us on Crowdcast to stay tuned. Thanks, Una.
And I'll send you those slides.
Yeah, Una will, if you can, post them in the forum so that everyone can connect and download them.
in the discussions thing in Crowdcast or in like this,
yeah, but it's
separate...
actually a topic on the forum, so either way we'll do, or either you can plug into forum or
you can send me that link and I'll upload it for everyone to see. Yeah, do come on the forum, guys, and tell us what you think and tell us what you learned and what was useful and what you'd like to know more about. So we're really eager to hear from you, obviously.
Yes, we will love to hear from you. So thanks Una once again. Thanks everyone. Have a great day, evening, night, whatever is at your time zone. So see you next time and bye-bye.
Bye guys, see you next time.
Ta-ta.